Well, hey everyone, it's Nate here. Welcome back to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for vinyl record collectors and music nerds. And this is episode 287, part 2 of our interview with Eerie Von of Samhain, Danzig, and lots of Misfits talk as well. Now, if you haven't heard episode 286, that, of course, is part 1 of our conversation. I'd suggest you go back and check that one out first. In episode 286, Eerie talks about his early days, growing up with Misfits, high school, early shows, Misfits records, the breakup of the band, the formation of Samhain, and lots more. Today, we pick up on that path and hear Eerie discuss the Samhain years, the recordings and pressings of Initium, Unholy Passion, November Coming Fire. Lots of vinyl record and collectible talk on this episode as well. Now, hearing these interviews, I think you'll all agree Eerie Von is a really friggin' incredible guy. He's seen a lot of amazing music history. He's really funny, and there is way more to his story. So check out his book, Misery Obscura, The Photography of Eerie Von. Lots of pictures and stories of his time with Misfits, Samhain and Danzig, all laid out in an absolutely gorgeous book. And while I hate to recommend anyone buy anything from Amazon, that is certainly a place you can get it. Otherwise, reach out to your local record shop, have them order in a copy of Misery Obscura. You get the book, it keeps the money in your community, and it keeps your local record store happy. And again, please people, subscribe to the Vinyl Guide podcast. It's free, and we literally have hundreds of other episodes featuring interviews with some incredible artists, including Henry Rollins, Ian MacKaye, Bernie Grunman, Don Was, George Clinton, Gary Newman, Rat Scabies, Wayne Kramer, and heaps more. Follow the Vinyl Guide on your podcast app, enjoy the episodes, and even share on your social media, please. That's always a huge help. Alrighty, everyone, enough of my yammering on. Let's jump into part 2 of our conversation with Eerie Von. I heard this story. Let me know if this is true or not, or your recollection. The band was about to go on tour, and they needed records to sell, and you guys went to a record pressing plant in Long Island, I believe, and it was closed, but they found the owner somehow, and even though there was no staff, they all went in there, turned the machines on, and pressed the records. Is that...
No,
okay.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
Especially if it's the first, because the first tour we went on for Initium didn't come out for like 30 days after that. Mm-hmm. So Glenn had already booked the tour, because that's the way he did stuff. Like when they said I was in the Misfits, they said, okay, 30 days we got a show. It was already booked. So that kind of stuff, like he had already booked the tour, but he had planned that the writing and recording and the pressing of the record would all coincide. Like that was part of the plan, mm-hmm. But we were like a month over and the records weren't ready to come out yet. So we went out and we had no record to promote. We played to like 30 people here, 50 people there. You know what I mean? Nobody knew who we were. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a cool story, but it never happened when I was in the band.
Got it. Now, would you guys sell records on the road?
Yeah, if we had them. Yeah, sometimes. He also brought records for friends we were going to run into, or maybe if shit hit the fan, you had to go to a record store and sell some records to get gas, or something, mm-hmm. So yeah, we would have a box of the latest records or whatever, or we'd have some T-shirts. And towards the end, we would bring screens and we would make sure it's on the road. And the Misfits had done this too. They would bring screens and they would screen print shit on people's leather jackets, which I thought was great. Yeah. Just bring a Crimson Ghost screen and just say, lay down your jacket. And they would just screen print the jacket. That's so awesome. So I remember he would call distributors or we'd find out and we would just go somewhere when we ran out of shirts and we'd have like a screen or two in the van. And we would just print shirts right then, since, we were selling shirts, so.
It sounds to me like he loved that whole manufacturing angle of things. It sounds like that in music is really Glenn and his element. Would that be fair?
It's complete control. That's what it is. That's he likes anything he can completely control. It's very simple. It's my way or the highway, so he had total control over that stuff, especially once Jerry wasn't around, then it was just like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And that's it.
Was he still dealing with Misfits stuff at that time? And was he still getting the mail order? Was he still having to deal with the old band, or did he make a really clean break?
No, he was still selling shirts. Misfit Records, when Sam Hain started doing good, Misfits Records started selling more too, Plus, he used those as leverage for distributors. Like, he would say, well, I'm not giving you this record if you don't take this record. And if it was like, I'm not going to give you Die Die My Darling if you don't take the first Initium record or whatever, the first Sam Hain record. So he was still making T-shirts. Still was putting the things in the records and then sending them to distributors. So he was still printing T-shirts, and then started doing the Sam Hain T-shirts and stuff. So no, the Misfits were still there, especially when the deal came down with Caroline, and then all the records were going to be on Caroline. So he was still getting checks from them and stuff. So yeah, he never made a break with the Misfits. I don't think ever.
Okay. All right. It wasn't a point of frustration at all that here he's trying to promote this one band, his new love, and he still has this shadow of Misfits hanging over him. It wasn't frustrating at all?
No. Oh, I don't know. Well, we never talked about that kind of stuff. But it like I said, it was more of a bargaining chip because, the Misfits got more popular when they weren't a band than they ever were as a band. So, like I said, if he wanted people to take this record, he would just say, well, I won't give you this one if you don't take that one. And if it was a Misfit record, that just helped. I don't think he might have been like, where were you guys 5 years ago when I needed you, like distributors or magazines or whoever wanted to know about the Misfits then, but no, I don't think, he might have been disappointed now and again. I don't know. We never talked about that crap. We were always moving forward,
Right. Now, in 1985, there was the Unholy Passion EP, and that was right before November Coming Fire. What do you recall about the band focusing on the EP rather than just saving it all up for the next album?
Yeah, I don't know. Pretty sure it was just a mood. Like he wanted something like this is the thing he was into, whatever we were all listening to. Mostly me and him listening to, Birthday Party and, some stuff that was very heavy rhythm, tribally kind of, crazy. It was always something kind of psycho going on, so he might have written these couple of songs and had an idea that this was either an EP he wanted just to get it out and then move on to something else. That's why there's only 5, 6 songs, because it wasn't the definitive direction that he wanted to go in, I imagine, because he's like, yeah, we're going to put out an EP. And I was just like thinking, well, you still got to press it, same size. You still got to make the covers. Like you wouldn't make as much money back on an EP, so it didn't really make sense. I would have said, well, why don't we just do a whole album, but I think he had these core 4 or 5 songs that just, he wanted to say something with it. And that was it. And then once that was done and he was moving on to another thing, then that's when, other songs all came together for a full album, Yeah, it was definitely, that's the mood that we were definitely in at the time. But it wasn't, I don't think he wanted it to be a whole album. It wasn't like a big statement. It was like a statement, but it wasn't like, this is how the band is now,
Right.
So that's what I remember. It was just a kind of a crazy time, and there could have been more songs if we sat down and really thought about it, or if I could have said something like, dude, let's just do a whole album. But I'm pretty sure he just didn't want to do a whole album. I just wanted to do an EP, and had other songs didn't fit in. That was usually the case. It was like, write a song, okay, that one's cool. Write another song, okay, that one kind of goes with that song, so I'll put it over here, and then write this real crazy one that doesn't go with either one of those. Let's put that one over there. So it was definitely like that. If you're working on a project and the whole thing is getting crazy, then you write a song that's kind of not crazy. You're like, we're not using that one,
Right.
So eventually enough songs came together because November Coming Fire is the songs just have like a cohesion. They sounded like they went together, sort of, And the other record was just all by itself. Like, this is the only time we sounded like that, or the songs were like that. So, yeah, you just, whatever project you're working on is what you do,
And November Coming Fire, it just seems to be, that's where it all just really came together. Tell me some of the memories of recording that album.
Yeah, we recorded the same place we recorded all the other ones. So it was just like tiny studio where, the band could barely, play at the same time. We had a little drum booth. It was basically just building a fucking booth around a set of drums. And then there was like a little tiny place where the guitar player could stand and the bass player could stand over here next to the keyboard. And then Glenn could just be in the booth, in the control room, because there was nowhere for him to go, and that was it. And I remember some of the songs, I was just like Human Pony Girl. Like, I had to play the same thing for like 4 minutes in a row, or however long the fucking song was. My hands are starting to fucking bleed and shit. And I'm like, this sucks. Like, I'm like, give me some fucking, I taped my 2 fingers together, and just put a bunch of gaff tape on them, and it just did the same slide the whole fucking time. And then, the drums aren't going right. Okay. Like, so Glenn's like, let me play it. So he goes there and sits down and plays the drums. And I'm like, okay, if you say so, and we just do it. And we tried to get the takes to come out right. Back then, a lot of times, if you didn't make a mistake, that was a take. You know what I mean? And the way Misfits did records, Misfits recorded a whole album in one day, like, and mix it. You know what I mean? That's like 10 hours, do the songs in like 8 hours or whatever, and then mix them in 2 hours or whatever they did. But it was, the whole thing was, you'd go home with a record, and so we only recorded at 3 or 4 hour intervals, because the guy would book other customers to come in, and, well, I've got somebody coming in at 8, and you guys can have from 3 to 8, whatever. And so, and Glenn would have to raise the money, to pay for it, So if you could come up with $300, go in the studio for a couple hours, So that's the way it was. That's why it has like November has the most cohesion to any of the albums, but each song is like way different, because every time we went in there was a new guitar overdub that went over top another 9 or 10 guitar overdubs, and none of them are in tune with each other, and they're all in different sounds and different gear, and it's put reverb on everything, and so yeah, it was the most, I think we knew the songs were good, but like London played on half the songs, Glenn played on the other half. And anytime Glenn's doing anything, especially with drums, it's just like, just get out of his way, Sort of like Animal from the Muppet Show, Definitely like on drums, like he couldn't like he listened to that Who Killed Marilyn record. He played drums on that. He couldn't play drum the whole thing at the same time. So when he would do that, he would just go nuts. That's why all the songs have lots of toms and stuff. It was just like some crazy guy beating on the drums, and we just played along,
Now, for things like the inserts that came with the records, I know November Coming Fire had a folded insert sheet. Is that anything, a photo collage? And I know you have a photographic background. Were you involved in any of that, or how did that artwork get made?
Oh, it was kind of like the Walk Among Us one. Collage was like, where I remember it coming from the most, I could be wrong, was that's what they did in high school yearbooks, They would take, to make everybody happy so everybody could get in the yearbook, instead of just printing individual photos, they would take photos and cut people's faces out and then make them into these big collages, and everybody would get in there. So, I did it on Rosemary's Babies, and I think it was just a thing. And it was just easy. We'll do 3 pictures of each guy, or 4 pictures of each guy, and 3 pictures of the guy you don't like as much. Like, it was always like that. It's like, the drummer doesn't need to be in 3 pictures. He can be in 2 pictures. It was always, he still does that. I'm telling you. And it's because when stuff comes out that I'm on, I can look at the picture and know that he put that picture because he knew I wouldn't like it. Stuff
you
like that.
You can see what mood he was in by how many times you appear and what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if he didn't like you, you could tell by looking at the record artwork. So he said, so we're going to do a collage and we're going to do, I'm going to do a lyric sheet on this one. Why it's not a sleeve, I don't know, because to me it's a waste of time. I love a nice sleeve with the lyrics on it. I don't like the fold out thing, but what I did probably was printed most of the pictures, or gave him pictures, or took pictures of whoever's in the band if we didn't have enough of each guy or whatever. So I was doing mostly the photography stuff.
Is he a bit of a pack rat? Like, do you think somewhere in the world, in his basement, somewhere, these sort of plates and pictures still exist?
I think he probably has. Well, until they did the Caroline deal, he had to turn over all the master tapes. But he probably had all the tapes in his fucking closet. In his parents' house in Lodi. Like, he lived in his parents' basement. And the plates and all that, probably same thing. He had filing cabinets and things, and they probably had the plates from all the old records and all that shit in there. He had a bunch of photos and, negatives and, undeveloped film. He would just go through stuff, and he would go, so like, he'd look at this, he goes, I think there's Misfits pictures on here. You want to develop this? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I just go get prints made. And he's like, what was on there? I'm like, they're okay. Some shots of you and Bobby Steele and Googie with black hair. He goes, oh, yeah, that's when Googie first joined the band. Yeah, those suck. So he didn't want them, so I would keep them, whatever. But, yeah, that stuff's all somewhere. Maybe he has it in a warehouse now, but if his – I don't know if his mom's still alive or not. But if the family still owns the house, the stuff's probably still there. I don't know. I mean, he was big for not doing anything about stuff. That's why things take so long to happen. So I'm guessing he's got that stuff all in a house somewhere. Or maybe by now you would have paid somebody to put it in storage. But
I talked to some bands who have no idea where any of their tapes, any of the artwork is. They would make the records and they would go out on tour, and everything else was just kind of left to the wind and disappeared over time. So I'm just curious. It sounds like he would not have allowed that to happen to these sort of artifacts.
No, he just kept stuff, and I did the same thing. I mean, if he didn't need something, like on the road, we would have. Like some t-shirt company would come out and say, okay, well, we want to do a new shirt. You got to design. He'd have the design. Then he would have the color of the inks or what paints he wanted used, and he'd do like a chart and stuff. And he would show it to them, or we'd give them the numbers of each thing. And then that thing was done with. So he'd just say, he'd throw it away, or he'd just leave it somewhere. And I'd be like, hey, can I have this? And it was like the artwork for the Jesus t-shirt or whatever, so I would keep all the stuff that he would throw out, or they would come and they'd bring you a bunch of prototypes of t-shirts or posters or the metal stuff that we made, and then he'd be like, hey, can I have that? He's like, yeah, I don't want it, so just take it. But yeah, the Misfit stuff, he probably just had all that stuff well into living in California. It was probably just still sitting there in the basement.
Now, it's around this time in the late 80s that Metallica started being very overt in their fandom of Misfits and Samhain. What was the impact that Metallica had on Samhain and the whole operation while you were there?
We didn't really, we didn't really think about it. We just thought it was cool that these guys were, they weren't really big, but they were big compared to us. And, we could see they were going to get big. So it was really cool. They were fans and they wanted to wear the shirt. So we just made them shirts all the time. And then we'd see them in magazines and they'd be wearing the shirt. We're like, cool. People are going to go, what the hell is that? What is this you're wearing, eventually? And if they told them, then it would help us, sell more records, or, it would just create a buzz, And then eventually when they got big and they were still doing it, me and Glenn would be like, yeah, that's not so bad that they're going all over, and every picture of James in the tour book has a Samhain shirt on, and they're playing for millions of people and selling millions of records. We're like, yeah, that's not a bad thing, So, but we just thought it was cool. And Glenn, I don't even think Glenn even liked Metallica, like their style of music just wasn't his thing, you know. He used to make fun of them for certain. We both used to bust their balls about certain things they were doing, and anytime they went to the acoustic guitars, we would just give them so the shit about it, you know. And just be like, "What a faggy!" And we'd play those little pieces they always played, like da 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 da. And we just always go like, we just laugh, you know. And you know, like I'd go to Kirk and like, "Why are you playing this thing? It's the same." And he's like, "Oh man, that's a fucking triad, man. Those are cool. I love those." I'm like, "Okay, you know, it just wasn't our thing, you know." You know, that was it. We liked them. We thought it was great. Somebody we knew was getting famous and selling a lot of records and stuff. But, you know, that was about it. You know?
Did you guys ever talk about any sort of collaboration? I understand you guys may have played together while auditioning guitarists, but was there anything like how would you jam with James and Kurt?
Oh, no, we never did that. Well, just unless we were all drunk and went out to a bar or something.
Okay.
Which that happened, you know, but the only time I was, you know, me and James went to hang out with Overkill in like East Orange, New Jersey, or West Orange, or somewhere. You know, and I don't know. It was the sticks as far as I was concerned. But so him and those guys, like, they were like, "James, put on a guitar and we'll fucking play stuff." And I'm like, "I can even play bass, and you already got a bass player." You know, like, bass players don't jam unless you don't have a bass player. You know, so I just sat there, but we never, you know, me and Glenn and James and Kurt got up and played some songs here and there, you know, and we would just be drunk. We're like, "Let's play some Misfits songs," you know.
Right.
So that was the extent of that shit. But I don't know if those guys ever, you know, James was like, "Hey, write us a song." You know, that'd be cool. Write us a song. Yeah. You know, and I bet you they asked, you know, but he'd probably be like, "I can't write your kind of stuff. And you can't play the stuff that I write." It was probably his idea. You know, his like, I'm not saying that's what he did, but I could see that happening. I'm like, "I don't want to write you a song." You know, because he would have called me and would have said, "Those guys want me to write them a song." I know he would have told me that. You know.
Were there people asking Glenn at that time to write them a song? I know he's since written a lot of songs for different people, but at that time, was he doing it beyond the band?
No, none of that happened until we got involved with Rick Rubin, you know, and then Rick had, you know, these other projects outside of, you know, the Def Jam stuff. Like, he'd get hired to be musical director or something, and he had to put songs together. So then he asked Glenn if he, you know, because Glenn turned him on to Roy Orbison, and he goes, "You got a song for Roy? Wouldn't it be cool to write a song for Roy?" He's like, "Yeah, I got a Roy Orbison song." Because as a songwriter, like I said before, you write a song, but if it's not right for the band you're in, then you're not going to do anything with it. So you put it on a shelf and say, "Oh, that's," you know. And he says, "Oh, I'm recording Mick Jagger with the Red Devils. You got a Mick Jagger song?" Then it's like, "Yeah, I got a Mick Jagger song," you know, stuff like that. So, you know, that didn't happen before, but once, you know, Rick Rubin started working with all these big famous people, he could just bring a song in and they'd be like, "Yeah, that works," like the Johnny Cash song. Johnny Cash would be like, "Yeah, I like it. Let's record it right now." You know, and that was it. Then Roy Orbison, same thing. It was just like, Roy would pretty much do anything anybody asked him to, you know. So he was like super nice, and he'd be like, "Well, I don't want to upset anybody. I'll just do their song," you know, that kind of thing, you know.
Was that song 13, was that originally going to be a Danzig song?
Not that I ever knew of. All I ever heard from him was that he said, "I wrote a song for Johnny Cash." And his dad liked Johnny Cash, so he probably already had this song in his archives, you know, which would basically, it would be a lyric on a piece of yellow, like, legal paper, like the small one, not even the big one. And because that's how he wrote, and he carried everything around this little see-through envelope, and that's where his lyrics were, and he carried it with him wherever he went, you know. And so he probably already wrote the song, but he didn't have any way to record it or anything. So it was just in his head, and he just remembered this how the song goes. And I wrote this to Johnny Cash. Well, he probably wrote the song and said, "You know, this would be really good for Johnny Cash." And then when the opportunity arose, he's like, "Yeah, I got a Johnny Cash song." You know, that was it.
Because I know there's a recorded version of it. It was in the Hangover movie. I don't know the history of it.
Yeah, he recorded that. Yeah, he destroyed it too. It was awful. Oh my God. The Johnny Cash version is fucking awesome.
It's hard to beat Johnny Cash at anything.
Should have just left it that way. But yeah, I heard it's on The Hangover. I was watching The Hangover, and I'm like, I'm hearing this thing, and I'm like, wait a minute, and I'm hearing it, and then I'm like, I recognize. Why do I recognize? Because I never heard the song, his version, and then I hear him like, because his voice wasn't so good at the time. He's like, I don't know. It's just it was one of those years that he just wasn't singing too good, and I was just like, oh my god, So then. So I didn't watch the movie. I'm like, now I'm all bummed out. Okay.
So after November Coming Fire and before Danzig, the solo band and the self-titled album, what other projects were there? Was there plans for another Samhain record?
We'll be back after these messages.
Well, hey there, you record nerds. Before you drop any dough on eBay or Discogs, make sure to search for your wish list at AudiofileUSA.com. AudiofileUSA.com has over 42,000 titles in stock and only sells excellent and near-mint vinyl records. Many are decades old and still in original shrink wrap. Dig into AudiofileUSA.com, search by artist, genre, even search by record label, and dig for the deals. AudiofileUSA.com is a family-owned and operated business, and all their records are damn gorgeous. That's AudiofileUSA.com, home of the Holy Grails. And next time you're in a record store, ask them for the Groove Washer by name. The Groove Washer is the best vinyl record cleaner out on the market. I use it daily, and my records look and sound their very best. There is no way I'd put any no-name cleaner fluid on my records. Only the best for cleaning, listening, and long-term storage. Groove Washer is safe, proven, and industry recognized. If your local record shop doesn't carry the Groove Washer, then go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10. We much prefer you buy one from a record shop, but if they don't have it, go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10.
Now we return to the program already in progress.
No limits.
So after November Coming Fire and before Danzig, the solo band and the self-titled album, what other projects were there? Was there plans for another Samhain record?
Oh, there was plans for another Samhain record before we changed the band to Danzig. We'd already done demos, and it was just going to be like regular business as usual. You put out another record like next year or whenever. And so we already had demos for like 5 or 6, 7 songs. I don't remember. I know we were doing Trouble, the Elvis song. We had Twisted Cane, Possession, Lords of the Left Hand, I believe. Not Lords of the Left Hand. What was it called? Yeah, I think that's what it was called. Yeah, Lords of the Left Hand. And a couple other ones, like The Birthing, maybe. There was one song that reminded me of Green Hell. It was like that. I can't remember that. I can't remember what though. I haven't listened to that stuff in a long time because we were already doing Danzig and I just didn't care anymore.
Right.
It's like, it was just a project that he had to get finished, but didn't really give a shit. So he and I were like mixing it out in LA when we were working on Lucifuge at the same time. And it was just like, I got to put it out, and didn't really. It came out around that time. But we had already taken all the good shit and used it on Danzig, like Twisted Cane and stuff, and Possession.
Is there anything you guys recorded that didn't come out that you're really kind of bummed never saw the light of day?
Oh, well, he put out those lost tracks of Danzig. There was, and I was just like, okay, I got to hear this. And he didn't do anything except remix Cold Cold Rain, which then he totally fucked up. But that's one of the ones that I would like to have seen come out in the veins of like Blood and Tears and stuff like that. Big dramatic, Righteous Brothers kind of song. And when we were recording it, I think he just wanted to record it because we were going to do a Righteous Brothers cover, and the song just turned into an original because we kept some of the feel and things, which is it's hard to explain. But he told me we're not putting this song out. And I'm like, oh, come on. It's so awesome. And your vocal's fucking amazing, which it was. the original board mix was great.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had a tape of it that I used to play, people would never. I put it on the hotline or whatever. But he said, "No, I can't sing this. I can't. We can't go on tour. I can't sing this every night." And I said, "He says, I said it's that one. It's that one note, right?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, okay, I get it. No problem." I said, "That sucks though, because it's so good." I said, "Couldn't we just do it once in a while?" He's like, "Yeah, but then nobody would know what it is because we were not putting it out and." You know what I mean? So it's just one of those songs, but it was really fucking awesome. I'm glad we recorded it because it's really good. But nobody has ever heard it the way it's supposed to sound because he either overdubbed or added bass to my track, and he just mixed it badly, so it doesn't sound like as cool as it was. But yeah, that's the only one. Other than that, the stuff that didn't make the records wasn't good enough to make the records, and it's still not good enough. You know what I mean? It's like I wouldn't have put out any of that stuff because it just wasn't good enough. I mean, if you want to be one of you record collecting crazy people and you got to have everything, well, that's fine. But it's
there's a reason they're outtakes, right? Yeah. So I've also heard that there was a project, a Walk Among Us 2 project that you and Glenn were working on.
Yeah. He was always pissed off, like anybody would be, that Slash Records or Ruby Records or whoever put out Walk Among Us never paid them. That's what he said. He said they never paid us, or we never get any royalties.
Mm-hmm.
So he had half the album of previously unreleased versions of the songs from different sessions, and like I remember the versions because I thought they were going on Walk Among Us, and then all of a sudden they were replaced by some other version. So he had like there's like 13 songs on the album. He had like 6 of the songs, and he says, "I want to go in and record the other 6 songs or 7 songs that we don't have, and put out a version of Walk Among Us that the record company doesn't own. That's the only way you can do it, You just re-record the songs because the record company only owns the recorded versions. So that was something, all the old 50s guys used to do, So yeah, he said, "I want to go in the studio. I want to do this." And he said, "Do you want to do it with me?" And it's like, basically, yeah, who else is going to do it? So it was like, yeah, you go, these songs, right? I'm like, yeah, I could pull it off on drums. And then he played, the guitar. He played whatever bass. I played bass. I don't remember exactly. I know I played drums for sure. And then did backup vocals, and and then he had this one song he said the Misfits never did. He wanted to record it, but they didn't. They thought it was, or Jerry most likely thought it was too much like what the hell is the name of that song? Hate Breeders. And he said, but it would have been. It would have been like a hit single or something called Mephisto Waltz. He said, so I want to do this one, and then I want to do a Cough Cool 10th anniversary version. So that was going to be Cough Cool 87, or whatever. So we did that and all. And it was going to happen, and then for some reason it just didn't happen, and then it just got left with all the other tapes. I can't remember exactly what time period. We were still in Jersey, so it was before we moved to LA, which would have been like 89. So by the time it just probably didn't make any sense, So it just got left. When Caroline got all the tapes, he gave them those tapes too, and that's where the confusion was. Well, these say Misfits and Real Platinum. I was like, yeah, Real Platinum didn't exist when the Misfits were recording.
So Caroline seems to have possession of a lot of things that weren't released.
No, everything that was on there was in the box set. There's nothing left.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, because I know the guy who did the box set. He did. That's everything. The stuff that never came out was like in the doorway, which he found on the master tape that either just didn't make the cut or was never finished because it's a really short song, and he put that out. That was what was left, and the other stuff is all false starts. Like they didn't record like 2 or 3 versions. They just got a good version, and that was the tape.
Right.
You know, so there's not a lot of stuff or any stuff left over because tape costs too much. You know, you just erased what you just did and went for another take. So they don't got nothing.
Do you know what happened to the Misfits' Enter at Your Own Risk album?
Never heard of it.
Apparently, there was about 2,000 copies that were supposed to come out as a 10-inch record. There's a test pressing made of it. I believe it was for Revolver Records in the UK. And it seems to have test pressings were made and then nothing happened with it.
Yeah. It had to be after would have been after they broke up because there was no connection with Revolver Records until Samhain. So
yeah.
And that was they put out a version of November Coming Fire, and that's it. So this other thing is just another one of those stories or just a bootleg that's floating around. Because I would have heard about it. I would have seen the artwork. You know,
right?
He would have told me. I was there all the time, so he would have said, "Yeah, I'm putting out this," or I would have been in his room and said, "Hey, what's this?" Because stuff would just be laying on the floor. So I would have been like, "Oh, what are you doing?" You know,
right.
It's like, "Oh, I'm putting out a new mystery record on all these tracks and everything." You know, like Legacy. I was there when he was mixing, putting Legacy together. And he was like, "You want to play on this?" I was like, "No." It's like that's why he played bass on some of the tracks. That's the way it sounds. Because he played another bass track to Jerry's because he didn't like what Jerry had played or whatever. So I definitely would have known about it. So I'm pretty sure it's another one of you record collector guys making up a story just because it's awesome.
That's why we're here talking about it. Let's get to the facts.
Hey, I'm telling you, I do this all day long. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm constantly correcting people, and on the, well, I heard this and I heard that, and it's getting even worse because there's people that don't even know who are in the band. You put up an old picture, and they're like, "Is that Doyle?" And it's like they don't even know who people are, and the stuff that they think is like the real deal is like so far away from what really happened or what was really going on. And so I spend a lot of time going, no, that's not what it was. I have to tell them the story. And other times it's just like, just let it go. That's a better story anyway.
What's the biggest misconception about Misfits, Samhain, or Danzig that you're aware of?
Oh, I don't know. I still think the people love the Arthur Googie got fired for asking for another cheeseburger story. I'm pretty sure that never happened. Glenn never told me that. I think it's just something. It was probably people seem to forget. Glenn and Jerry they're from Jersey. They had good sense of humor. When they would do these interviews in the back of a van or whatever,
they're busting balls.
Yeah, exactly. And I could read one and know exactly what's going on because I either have heard it said or have said it, or just know how people are, and I could look and laugh, and other people take stuff totally seriously. That's one of the things I remember. But no, it has to come up where people say, "Is it true that you guys did this, that, and the other thing?" And then I can usually go, "No, we did this, we didn't do that." But that's the one I always hear about. And when I put the pictures of the Misfits in McDonald's in my book, they all thought that was the picture when Googie got fired because they're in McDonald's, and all this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
They're making their own mythology.
Yeah, that's the ticket. That's what happened. I happened to be there, and Arthur asked for another hamburger, and Glenn fired him. Yeah, that's what he did.
Well, you know what? This is probably a good time for me to share with people that Eerie Vaughan's book, Misery Obscura, The Photography of Eerie Vaughan, can be ordered from Amazon.com or any place that you get books online. It's an amazing collection, photographs throughout these periods that we're talking about here, lots of information. It's available on Kindle, on hardcover. It's a gorgeous book. Eerie, what else you got going on these days?
Basically, you can tell people, or I'll tell people right now, if you're listening to this, it's basically what the book sounds like when you read it. Pretty much it sounds like me telling you a story. So anybody who's a fan will definitely love it. And right now I'm working on the follow up to that. Been working on it. It's not always all up to me.
Mm-hmm.
So things happen when they're finished. Working on a book of my paintings, which I have like hundreds of, and that's going to be fun. I have a children's book that I've been wanting to put out for a long time. It's about a little witch. I still haven't figured it out. I got all the paintings done, but I still can't figure out the story because I have to. If it's a children's book, it has to teach a lesson. It has to have a moral, and I don't know how to do that. Because I've never when I do write a song, play in a band, make a painting. I never ask anybody's opinion. Hey, what do you think of this new song? No, I don't want your opinion. So I don't really know how to. I don't really know how to do that. But I keep picturing myself sitting in this little book thing, little circle with a bunch of little children, and I'm reading the book to them. And it's got to, and I really want to just write the book that I want to write, but then mothers will be horrified. I'll get in trouble and nobody will buy it. And I'm also recording stuff and I'm going to be putting out another record, but I don't know when, so it'll come out when it's done. And I haven't told anybody yet. So you're the first one that anybody knows, but yeah, don't ask me when it's coming out. Because it might never come out. How do you know? It might never come out. Who knows? But
Well,
anyway.
When it does, I want you to come back on, and we'll have a very in-depth conversation there, and we'll make sure people get aware of that when it's available.
Yeah, or you could just promote it, and I don't have to do anything. You can just promote it and play it, and then say you should listen to this and buy it. It's good, and I can just go yeah.
We'll absolutely help you get the word out. Now, let me ask you this. You've held on to a lot of collectibles over the years, I imagine. What are some of the things in your private collection that you think Misfits and Samhain fans would completely go ape over?
Well, I used to have a lot of stuff. I've sold it or given it away from the last 35 or how many years, I keep like one of each thing that I like, like my Misfit records, I got one of each thing except for Beware. I never got that one. I don't know why. I should have just asked Doyle if I could have one. Back in high school, I just never did. But I had the Samhain backdrop in my closet for like 10 years. I have little things from the Misfits. I used to get like posters, and I had all the colored vinyl. Like I said, I had the Pink Legacy of Brutality. Somebody just showed me a picture of that Samhain backdrop that Glenn and I painted in his basement, which was really hard to do because his basement wasn't very big. And it was like 12 by 12, and I don't know how. It was like, hold it up on that side. And, if we had to project the scarecrow on there. Anyway, and just a lot of like little things. Like Glenn gave me a bag of clothes once, like a T-shirt. He's like, I'm throwing this stuff out. I'm like, what is it? He's like, this old punk rock shirts and stuff I used to wear. I'm like, I'll take it, And like one of his old Max's Kansas City shirts, like long sleeve with the poster printed on it, like stuff like that. I got wristbands and shit from that Glenn was like, I need new wristbands. We just like throw them away, and I would just take them, I got a microphone we used in Samhain and Danzig that he used to sing through somewhere. I don't know if it was a Misfit microphone. I'm pretty sure that he brought it down to rehearsal because I didn't have a microphone. And it could have been his Misfit microphone. I don't know. But whatever it is, I know he did Samhain and Danzig, with that microphone in my basement. So I don't know. It's just, just stuff that I can't even think of right now. I used to steal guitar picks off Doyle's shit, or off his amps, little things.
Are you still on fairly friendly terms with everyone, or has it been years since you've had any conversations?
Oh, I don't talk to Glenn. He doesn't talk to me. But everybody else, I'm friends with. I still have Jerry and Doyle's phone number, and I say hi to them or text them and see how they're doing every so often. Chuck, I heard from like 10 years ago. I haven't heard from him since. I never had his phone number anyway. He never had a phone. And I heard from John I don't know, 5 years ago. I don't hear from him. But, the other guys in the Misfits, Bobby Steele, Frank Ricotta, Jim Catania, Joey Image used to say hi once in a while. So we were all in some kind of weird fraternity. That's why we were kind of friends, and we'd run into each other at conventions. And it's basically like, I was in a band with Glenn convention, that kind of thing. Like I survived being in a band with Glenn, so it's basically that's why we're all kind of, kindred spirits or whatever.
Well, you survived multiple bands with Glenn, and you guys used to be so close.
Well, it was the same band. We just changed the name. That was all. We thought Danzig could sell more records. No, Samhain was too weird. We already had like this image of this horror thing. Him and Ruben were like, this will sell more records. So I didn't give a shit. I just made a joke when he said we're going to change the name of the band to Danzig. I said, oh, like Bon Jovi. That's the first thing I said. So I totally understood it. I didn't give a shit. It was to me, it was still the same band, and we just got other guys to play, and the songs are just going to evolve the way they always had. So, it didn't matter to me. It was still Glenn. I had to, put up with all his crap and do things behind his back he didn't know about, never tell him, things like that. It was fun.
Well, Eerie, look, I've taken up so much of your time, and I really do appreciate it. And I probably kept you away from eating your dinner, which was warming up a couple hours ago.
Oh yeah,
so,
it's cold. It's way cold now. Yeah.
Is there any record stories, anything vinyl related that you think would be really interesting to share, or something I haven't asked that you think would be a really cool story?
Well, it depends. It's more. Like I said, it's easier when somebody says, I heard this, or what about this, or that kind of thing. The only thing that I remember that's directly record related, besides going into stores and selling 3 Hits from Hell for like $5, and just so you could go eat lunch, or whatever. But going to the plant in Long Island where the mythical break-in or whatever took place, that other story. The first time we went there, he and I went, and we got to walk through the plant and see how they make the records. We got to pick out the colored vinyl we wanted, because it was all these little pebbles that they put in and they heat up and it turns into vinyl and all. But what the funny thing was, there was all these really big records, like Billy Idol's Rebel Yell they were pressing, like big Michael Jackson, big stuff at the time, Madonna, whatever was going on. And we were like, wow, this place is really big. They're pressing Billy Idol and everything is selling millions of copies. Yeah, they were bootlegging it, These records looked exactly like the stuff that was on the shelves, and they were bootlegging them all. So it was really weird. And the other thing, okay, this will drive people crazy. See, that plant got raided by the FBI because of the bootlegging, right? And one day they just showed up, padlocked the thing, and walked away. And they're still, at the time, I don't know if it's still true, because if you go online, you can go, there's a site for this pressing plant. But at a certain point, there was still all these Misfit, Samhain, 12 inches, and whatever else, some of the repressings of the 7 inches, the sleeves and the records were just sitting there in a warehouse, So, yeah, so there was stuff like Glenn never could go pick the stuff up because the place was seized, So
do you know which pressing plant this was?
Huh?
Do you know which pressing plant this was?
Yeah, it's the PRI record plant, the one that the one in Long Island, in Wine Dance, Long Island. Okay. Yeah, and that was it. That was the new plant, and we started with Samhain and Die Die was the first record to be pressed there, and then everything after whatever came out after that was pressed there until they got in trouble for bootleg and everything. So there you go. It might still be in a warehouse, guys. You go to Long Island. It's the same place where the Amityville Horror House is, the same town, I think. And it's on the way. You can stop and see that too. And then you go to this place and you see if you can find a warehouse that's full of old Samhain and Danzig records.
Dear Lord, you don't know what evil you've unleashed now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man. I really do appreciate you spending time.
All right, not a problem. You know, I love telling these old stories as long as I can remember them.
Eerie, thank you so much, man.
No problem.
I really appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Oh, man, we absolutely have to have Eerie back. He shared so much great information, and I know there's so much more there. Again, if you want to hear more from Eerie, pick up his book, Misery Obscura, available wherever fine books are sold. I'd recommend going to a local bookshop or your local record shop. Have them order it in, and I'm sure you'll be enjoying it shortly. Keeps the money in the community, and of course keeps your record store happy. That's very important. And if you like keeping people happy, then please consider becoming a patron of the Vinyl Guide. Patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. It helps keep our podcast going. It puts a few burritos in my stomach each month, and you get access to all sorts of extra stuff, extended interviews, additional content, secret episodes, and more, all up at patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. And thanks in advance for your support. That is it for this episode of the Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, feel free to leave us a positive review on iTunes. Log in there, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 stars, whatever you got to do. Say something nice. We love it when you try to make us blush. Of course, you can leave us reviews on all other platforms as well. I think we're on Google and Stitcher and a few others like that. And I think they accept reviews as well. So please be kind to us and even share these episodes on social media. That is a huge help. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.